Today, we are diving deep into Venezuela, a country that is just full of staggering contradictions. You've got this place with unbelievable natural beauty and just immense wealth under the ground, but at the same time, it's trapped in a massive economic crisis. So we're going to explore how its geography, the very land itself, might be both its greatest gift and its biggest curse. Right at the very heart of Venezuela's story is this huge paradox. On one hand, you have this land of just jaw-dropping beauty and incredible resources. And on the other, you have this deep, long-running economic collapse. So how can a country be so rich and so broken at the exact same time? Well, to figure that out, we have to start with the land. I mean, just try to picture this landscape. You've got Angel Falls, the tallest uninterrupted waterfall on the entire planet, just pouring off a massive, flat-topped mountain. You've got the northern tip of the Andes, and you have the Guyana Highlands, which are literally some of the most ancient rocks you can find in South America. It's a land of extremes. And that's just what's on the surface. Beneath all that scenery, there's a treasure chest. We're talking about gigantic deposits of oil, high-grade iron ore, the bauxite you need to make aluminum, tons of gold, and even significant reserves of rare earth minerals. The natural wealth here is truly, truly world-class. But that, of course, brings us to the real puzzle. This graph here shows Venezuela's GDP. You can see it peaked around 2012, and then it just fell off a cliff. A dramatic, sustained freefall. So the question is pretty obvious. With all that natural wealth, how on earth did this happen? To find the answer, we have to go back to the source. And the first clue is right there in the country's physical layout. If we want to understand where the wealth comes from, we first need to map out the 4 distinct geographic regions of Venezuela, because each one plays a totally unique part in this story. So you can pretty much break the country down into these 4 main zones. You have the Maracaibo lowlands up in the northwest, the northern mountains running along the coast, the huge Orinoco plains right in the middle, and the ancient Guyana highlands down in the southeast. First up, the Maracaibo lowlands. The best way to think about it is like a giant spoon-shaped bowl. It's super flat, and right under Lake Maracaibo and all the land around it, that's where you find the oil, the petroleum that for decades was the engine of the entire country's economy. Next, you've got the northern mountains. This is basically the very end of the massive Andes mountain range, and it creates this big, sweeping arc right along the Caribbean coast. This mountain range has a huge impact on the climate and, where most of the people live. Then, smack in the middle of the country, you have the Orinoco Plains. They're called the llanos. Just think of immense, flat grasslands stretching as far as you can see. And the whole region is defined by the Orinoco River, which is one of the biggest rivers in the world, and all the smaller rivers that feed into it. And finally, the big one, the Guyana Highlands. This region covers more than half the entire country. It's this ancient, eroded landscape famous for those incredible flat-top mountains called tepuis. And this is where we find a massive concentration of Venezuela's other mineral riches. Okay, so we've got our map. Now, let's start laying the treasure on top of it, because you can draw a really clear, direct line from the geography of these regions to the specific resources they hold. And the connection couldn't be clearer. The Maracaibo lowlands? It's all about oil. The Guyana highlands? That's the heartland for iron ore, bauxite, and gold. And those powerful rivers that flow out of the highlands, they provide an incredible amount of hydroelectric power. The country's wealth is literally etched right into its geography. Okay, so here's a super important point. Who owns all this stuff? Well, this quote from Article 12 of the Venezuelan Constitution makes it crystal clear. All the minerals, all the oil, it all belongs to the state. It's public property, and it can't be sold off. This legal rule is absolutely fundamental to understanding everything that happens next. And that brings us to the human side of the story. You have this incredible prize under the ground, and the state is the sole owner. So the big question is, how has it been managed over the years? Well, the history is a roller coaster of massive booms followed by just devastating busts. If you look at this timeline, you see a really clear pattern of more and more state control. It started in the 70s, but the big turning point was 1975, when the government nationalized the huge Orinoco steelworks. Then, after 2007, that state control went into overdrive with more takeovers and expropriations. That's basically when the government just takes over private companies. And that really set the stage for what came next. So, what was the result of all this? Well, the data really tells the story. This chart shows iron ore production. Now, that dotted line way up at the top, that's the industry's total capacity, what it could be producing. But the blue bars, that's what was actually produced. Just look at the gap that opens up. Production doesn't just dip, it completely collapses to a tiny fraction of its potential. And it wasn't just about digging raw stuff out of the ground. This chart shows processed iron pellets, a much more valuable, refined product. And what do you see? It's the exact same story, a peak and then a steep nosedive. This tells you the problem wasn't just in one mine. It was systemic. It was affecting the entire production chain. So that brings us to where things are today. And the situation is really defined by two things: the incredible potential that is still sitting there in the ground, and the very, very real challenges that are stopping anyone from getting to it. The hurdles are just huge. I mean, first off, you're dealing with industrial plants and equipment that are decades old, totally obsolete. On top of that, there's been a severe lack of investment, so basic repairs just haven't been done for years. All of this has led to what you could call a production paralysis. And it's all made worse by a massive shortfall of the money needed to fix any of it. And yet, and this is the crazy part, the paradox is still there. Despite all of these problems, the wealth hasn't gone anywhere. The potential in places like the Orinoco Mining Arch is still vast, holding not just gold and bauxite, but also the rare earth elements that are so critical for all of our modern technology. So this is where our whole journey comes together, from the incredible landscapes to the brutal economic data. It all boils down to this one central question about the relationship between a country's land and its future. You have to wonder, is geography destiny?
And that's really the question I want to leave you with. For a nation that's been gifted with such extraordinary natural wealth, does that geography end up being its greatest blessing? Or can it, through mismanagement and dependence, become a kind of curse, a heavy burden? That right there is the central puzzle of Venezuela.